Hi, everybody, and welcome back to yet another cracking installment of the Matt Brown Show. This is the Secrets of Fail series where we're talking to CEOs and entrepreneurs all about their business blunders, the stuff they won't put on their LinkedIn timeline. So we're super grateful to have on the line from North Carolina today, Brian Reale, the CEO of an incredible company called ProcessMaker, processmaker.com. So, Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matt. Great to be here.
Fantastic. So, Brian, why don't you kick us off with the elevator pitch? What are you guys up to?
ProcessMaker is a leading low-code solution for digital process automation and intelligent document processing. So essentially that means that we take custom business processes. So say you're a bank and you're opening new accounts, that tends to be a custom process, or you're a university and you have a process by which a student can transfer credits into the university and get credit for those credits. And so in our solution, whether you're the higher ed institution or the bank, you're able to design that process in kind of a drag and drop designer. And by designing it, you're actually creating the code that then runs and automates the process. So that means that inside you build the web forms, the connectors to the systems, all the alerts, all the dashboards, the reports, and all that with little or no code. And on top of that, if you've got data sources that are unstructured, so documents, emails, Excel files, PDFs, things like that, we are able to extract the data, the meaningful data from those intelligently to put those in the process. So we make this as a very lightweight API-driven microservice. We've got about 400 customers in many different countries around the world, actually 52 different countries. They're running about 2,000 processes in total and more than 100 million cases a year with ProcessMaker.
That's incredible. So are you working with clients that are quite large in size, medium, small, medium, large, across the whole gambit, or do you have a sweet spot?
We're generally mid-market, depends on the so really small customers, meaning under, say, a few hundred employees, this would not be the right solution because you really want to have structure, and smaller businesses tend to need more flexibility than they do structure. So, when you've got hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of employees, your processes tend to be very structured. So we want customers with high value processes, if they've got few processes, or lots of processes if they're big. So some of our banks automate hundreds of processes with ProcessMaker on that single platform.
Okay, awesome stuff, man. Well, look, let's get on to the meat and the potatoes of this series, which is all about business failures. So, Brian, what is your story of fail for our audience around the world today?
So as an organically grown business, as an entrepreneur who's been at this for 20 plus years in ProcessMaker, when you've kind of got that journey, a lot of times when you start out, you don't think it's going to be that long. Of course, we started out during the dot-com boom, so in 2000, and we're sucked in just like maybe now in the SaaS boom or the AI boom, and but it tends to then be a long and winding journey. And in the middle of that journey, it's easy to get distracted, and I ended up starting another company, and this is where I think one of the bigger lessons of failure came from. And this was a device company for live entertainment. It allowed you to do a projection mapping onto a moving actor in a space or a moving object in a space. And there's similar things out there now with projection mapping, but nothing that does it like we were doing it in real time. And we had an incredible contact, made a great presentation, and on that very first presentation to the largest rental company in the world for live equipment, we had the right people in the room, board members, very high C-level people from the company. They were amazed, and they were like, "We're in. We want to do this." And literally within a couple of weeks, we had an order worth about $1 million. And so we thought, we're made. This is incredible. We were celebrating for a couple of weeks after that. And we went to work, and they started suggesting changes to the product, and it was a hardware product. So first lesson was hardware products are hard. And that's why you see this explosion of businesses now, because there's so many software businesses, SaaS businesses, very low barrier to entry. But we had to make a lot of changes to that product and adapt it. It needed a special type of connectivity. And when we did all that, and it took us a long time to get that product to market, it took us about 2 years to modify that. So what seemed like immediate success sort of then dragged out into a couple of years. But the most important lesson was we had made that sale and we had gotten that confirmation from a distributor. And I had remembered after the fact that in my kind of first job out of college, this idea that you don't want to be disintermediated from your customer, especially when you're starting out as a startup. And so we had this huge distributor. We were a fly, a mosquito to them. And so they didn't have the ability to really attend to our needs to learn. And we were just too far from the customer. And so we spent all that time and we never really got customer, product market fit. So even though we got that giant order right out of the gate from a distributor, ended up with a lot of boxes in that distributor. And you can, this was out in Las Vegas. And so I did get a call a few years ago from a pawn shop in Vegas asking me about this device, saying, what is this and how much is it worth? And so that was ultimately where those devices kind of ended up. And so it just, you got to be close to the problem you're solving.
Mm-hmm. So, David, let's double click on some of the key lessons that you took away from that. So, obviously, I'm familiar with the distribution OEM, end customer reseller model, and that. What stands out for you? You mentioned being close to your customer being one of those things, but what else stands out for you as a key lesson that you learned from that experience?
Yeah, you need to, sometimes you can't go as fast as you'd like to go. So this idea of a mega order in the beginning, in our current business, in the software business, there's the corollary of, don't get seduced by a big client that suddenly needs lots of changes to the product and takes you down a path that wasn't your sort of premeditated path. And if you're building a business, bootstrap business organically, it's pretty easy to fall into that trap. So you get a big customer, they want a lot of changes, but it ultimately isn't the changes that the sweet spot in the market needs. And so suddenly you become a custom kind of build shop. And so I think it's, again, this idea that you have to be really close to the market, to the customer. You need multiple voices of a customer to really understand. So it can't be one customer voice. That becomes really dangerous. Again, all those things sort of in the software side will make you fall into being just a custom development software shop, which is the path of many, and it can be a fine path, but it's different than the product path.
Yeah, Brian, you mentioned fly, right? Like you were like a fly to them. Is there? I mean, in your experience, obviously, you've scaled ProcessMaker to an amazing size, but when you are starting out, is there a way for you to not be a fly in the context of a big distributor? When you've got something of value, you've got a potential customer. How do you leverage your product so that you can get the most favorable terms? Meaning, what I'm trying to get to is, how do you prevent that situation from happening? Is it actually possible when you are the size of company that you were at the time?
It's really, really hard. So there's, we faced that once or twice as well as ProcessMaker, where there's kind of two interesting sides to it. As we were talking about before, we partnered with private equity about 2 years ago, and almost any private equity analysis to get an investment as a company, they're going to do a concentration of customer risk profile. And so if you've got, more than 10% of your income coming from a single customer, that's going to significantly decrease your value. It adds significant risk to the business. What if that customer leaves? And we've seen the corollary on the other side. If you're doing business with a Fortune 100 customer, they want to make sure they're not more than say 8 or 10% of your revenue, because they have the reverse risk. So it's really tough. And so that's one way that it gets prevented. They generally won't let you do business with them if they're going to represent that much of your business. So I think that it's hard to avoid if somebody offers you the money for a contract and you're trying to grow, then it's almost impossible to resist.
Brian, let's go back in time here. So if you could get into the Matt Brown Show time machine and do things differently, what would you do differently and why?
So when we first started out in 2000, we did raise very little money. We tried to raise money, and then the .com kind of crash came. And then we tried at other moments in time as well. And I think having money to start a business, to be financed, allows you to focus on a plan as opposed to kind of customers which have different whims and different needs. I don't know if I would do that differently. I think everybody does tend to do that differently today. Either your cost of starting a business is so much lower because you're a SaaS business, at least in our case, the world I know is SaaS software, or at least kind of pre this new crisis, it was very easy to get funding to go start a business. If you're bootstrapped, it's also been expressed to me that bootstrapped, you're going to end up doing some consulting work to build your business, but that is an exact polar kind of opposite to building a product business. If somebody says, build a button for this page, then you're trying to get it done in as few hours as possible. If you're a consulting business, if you're a product business, you have different you want to make it look as good as you can. You want to make it as functional as you can. So, part of me says I would really have a better defined plan. We wandered for a long time, so it took 20 years. If you're starting out and somebody tells you you're going to start this business, it's going to take you 20 years to get there. I don't think anybody starting out today would really think they want to do that. In retrospect, it was great. Love the journey. But you'd probably want to have a really, tightly defined business plan. And you probably do want to raise capital for that in today's world. I think it's just very difficult to do it in a bootstrap way. So, I kind of go back and forth. Would I have done that differently?
Yeah, it's hard to go back in time when you learn something that like hindsight's always a perfect science, right? And I've learned through talking to CEOs on this series and over the last 9 years on the show, like your breakdowns are in many cases your breakthroughs. You just got to persevere. Yeah,
it became our expertise over time as well. I mean, we knew how to grow a bootstrap business.
So let's talk about your advice, Brian, to other CEOs and entrepreneurs out there in terms of the importance of failure in business success. What's your advice to CEOs out there?
I mean, you've said it in your different interviews. I mean, it's and every kind of business school and every entrepreneurship program teaches it. Fail fast, and I think everybody says it. Maybe people don't really quite understand what it means. We get pushed by our private equity investors every day to try things. They're investing in a business because they want us to try things so that we can try and find breakthroughs that will allow us to grow faster. And you can't be overly cautious if you're going to do that. You need to try some things and you need to fail and you need to set up the experiments correctly. So you need to really have a kind of a methodology for running tests. We've all kind of learned from the whole web testing, the A/B testing is really the way to do it. You can quickly see which page performs better, which ad performs better, and there's tools to do that nowadays. And I think when you're testing something in your business, you have to think about it in the same way. You're going to need to run a test. You need to define what success looks like, what the steps towards success look like, and you have to have really, really, I think, really well defined. So that you don't get signals that you think are success or think are failure, and then don't come to any kind of conclusion. Like, did that work or did it not work? So we're trying a new market. We might get to the end and think, well, maybe maybe the market's still good, but we just didn't do it quite the right way. And that's what you don't want to have happen. You want to know why you failed. And that's really not that easy.
Yes, exactly. I think sometimes we're measuring the wrong things, or we're not making the right or carrying out the right experiments. And so oftentimes it's this elusive thing. Is this a failure? Like, I don't know. Like, is it?
Yeah. And I think that's in that phrase, fail fast. It's not so clear. I think most people don't understand just how difficult it is to set up the experiment to actually know. And we're running, literally every month we're visiting what we committed to doing as a business, that each of the leaders committed to doing, and then trying to come up with the conclusion of what was the result, and do we go forward, or do we, go for which one of these do we carry forward? Because we're, always trying to reduce and focus, so we can't go forward with everything we're trying.
Yeah, I love that point, because actually I think it's about failing slow rather than failing fast, right? Because it's like, it'd be great to fail fast, but actually it can take, it's depending on the size of company and the context of everything, it can take a long time to get that type of feedback, right? Or that insight into, like, if you do a social media campaign, like Gary Vaynerchuk now is banging on about quant and qual data and get the insights, and then you scale from there. But to get the quant and qual insight, like, that takes time. So when you say fast, what is fast? How fast is fast?
Yeah, And that's exactly right. In our case, it's okay. We went to market with we approached these 10 clients, and they all said no. Okay, but do we know why they said no? And if we had these other features they were asking for, so now do we go back and build those features and try with another 10 clients or the same 10 clients? So now instead of a month, now we're up to 2 months, and maybe that takes us longer because there's something in the engineering queue that's blocking us coming out with those new features. And so it just starts dragging on, and then suddenly you're like, well, what did we accomplish this quarter? What did we test, and what did we learn?
Yeah.
And maybe it's not enough.
Exactly. Brian, I'd like to talk to you about books, tools, and resources for a moment. So, are there any books, tools, or resources that you recommend entrepreneurs, CEOs read on their personal journeys?
There's I work with one organization called the Founder Institute, which is really an interesting kind of incubator group if it's for somebody who's like really sort of just getting started. And there the idea is really it's a sort of business incubation program, runs all around the world, really interesting in hundreds of cities around the world, with the idea that the next great ideas are not necessarily going to come from Silicon Valley or the traditional kind of epicenters of new ideas, and it's a program that is, you have to come out building a business. So you go in with your idea, and the idea is to give real honest feedback. As a mentor, you're giving real honest feedback. They know that's really a bad idea, because most entrepreneurs can't get honest feedback. People tell them it's a good idea, and they waste more and more time. And so this one's great because it actually takes you through a program. So instead of being just a book, you actually have to take the steps. If by week 7, you have not incorporated your business and launched something, or by week, whatever it is, week 5, then you're immediately ejected, and you lose your fee that you paid to get into it. So, there's lots of books out there, but I think there's no substitute for actually having somebody who's holding your feet to the fire and forcing you to go through it. So a coach, I think coaching, although there's tons of coaches out there today, it's pretty necessary to have somebody who is holding you accountable, whether it's your board, whether it's your partner. And partners, it could be tough. I was in a partnership for many years. It's tough for the partner to be honest, especially if you're really good friends. So maybe you need somebody with a little more distance. So I would actually say, go get a practical program, a good coach, and somebody who's going to make you execute.
Mm-hmm. Such good advice. Brian, thank you for being vulnerable in the Secrets of Fail series. I'm sure this failure is one of thousands over the last 2 decades that you've made building a successful enterprise. So thank you so much for lending your perspective to my audience around the world. I appreciate you for that.
Thanks, Matt. It was great to be here.
Anytime. Thanks, everybody.